Yeah, no one ever insults me. I don't know. It's just all praise. I only get praise.
You just lost 5 listeners.
So mine probably would be. Welcome to With You Podcast. I'm David.
And I'm Tara.
I'm a marriage and family therapist and professor.
And I'm a birth doula and educator.
And we're married to each other. We've raised 4 kids, and we're in professions, as you see, that deal with coming alongside people.
Right. So in this podcast, we're going to share what we've learned about relationships and life transitions. We'll do that by sharing our own experiences, by interviewing people who have a great story to tell. Mm-hmm. And we've got some expert interviews to give us some even better information.
It's going to be so good. Let's get started.
Please join us.
We're glad you're here with us today. This is our first podcast, and we want to let you know who we are and what we're planning on doing. And what we kind of thought was that we'd share some of our stories, our life experiences, and some of our professional experiences around the different stages of parenting development, relationship, dealing with each other, dealing with friends, all that stuff.
Right. So it's the idea that we're created for relationship, and that's central to how we cope with things in life and what makes it better or worse. So
it's not because of rugby, because I really thought we had the name With You because of rugby. That's not the case. It's all this other stuff.
I don't know the rugby thing.
So if you're a rugby player out there, let us know why With You is important in rugby. I learned from our boys, they played rugby, and it's about support the same way. Like you're running down the field, you get tackled, you need people supporting you behind you. Otherwise, the ball gets turned over. So they always yell With You.
And so the other question that people have asked is what's with the mountains? Because in my office, I have an office space in downtown Wheaton, and I've got pictures of mountains everywhere. And the mountain theme, we live in the Midwest where there is nothing higher than our heads here except for skyscrapers in Chicago. So
I believe the height is 751 feet above
sea level. Right. We're
at
not
the top of the hill here at our house.
There's no mountains to climb where we live. So what's with the mountains? And really, I think that goes with the metaphor of how we think about dealing with things together. Just sort of a little background, my dad was huge into mountain climbing. And so part of what we did when we were on vacations, if there was something high, he wanted us to climb it together. Or something low. We went down into the Grand Canyon too. That was the opposite direction. But the idea of climbing a mountain is conquering something that's challenging and that you can't predict. It's very different than comparing a life experience that's hard to, say a 5K or a marathon, which is
or running from first
which
base
is hard.
To second
right.
base.
Right.
That's
we're not runners.
No.
So that sounds hard to us.
Yeah.
But you can predict those things. You can plan for those things. You can prepare exactly what your pace is going to be on a marathon run or something. With a mountain climb, you can't tell how long it's going to take to get from the bottom to the top. And you don't always know what's around the next corner or what challenges are going to come up. And I think that compares really well to challenges in our lives.
I learned that when your dad introduced me to climbing mountains, and I thought he was going to leave me for dead.
Yeah, that's one of the first tests he had for you. When David came to meet the family when we lived in Arizona, my dad said, let's go for a little walk. And
that was a lie.
A little walk.
And there is a mountain that used to be, it's been renamed since, I don't know what it's called.
Yeah,
but
it doesn't matter.
Yes,
it's in Phoenix.
It's a high, rocky, mountainous thing
Barren.
In the middle of Phoenix.
Yeah.
And Dad used to take all of our visitors up that, but especially for you, that was a test.
Yeah.
And
you
learned what it would be like to be in my family.
Yeah, and how he led though, he was like a gazelle. Dad could run up that mountain like nobody's business, but he made sure that I was okay, even though he would kind of go up ahead and then come back to make sure I wasn't laying on the trail.
He'd always go the pace of the slowest hiker.
Yeah, which was me, by the way.
You and
always. And
at that time.
One time we drove up to Pikes Peak, and being from the Midwest, I didn't understand mountains. When you get up to the top, there's like
Less oxygen.
there's less oxygen. Yeah. So I don't do so well in altitude. But you get to the peak and then you see, oh, there's multiple peaks that you're just up on top of one. But then when you descend, there's going to be going up again, and having
Right.
someone that knows that process is
So that
helpful.
was one of the cardinal rules for hiking in our family, was that you don't do it alone.
Yeah.
You never hike alone. And so that's central to our idea of being with you, is that we're in this together. We should be walking this journey with other people alongside us and paying attention to the people who've gone ahead of us.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's
and don't you want to go on? I always wanted to go on a hike of somebody that's been on the trail before. I wouldn't want me to be like a mountain guide of like, hey, I come from Illinois. Let's go climb a mountain. Have no idea what the path is. I
Yeah.
haven't been on it before.
those are the people that need the rescue
Yeah.
helicopter. Yeah.
And so whether it's therapy, whether it's doula, childbirth, do you have people that have been along the path and can kind of walk with you and point out, oh, here's where we are, and giving perspective as well as maybe pacing.
Right. And that's the other idea of the mountaintop experience, because a lot of things in life that are big transitions end up being those mountaintop experiences that we always remember, and how we felt there, and the perspective it gave us kind of helps inform what we do for the rest of our life, how we feel about what it took to get there and who was with us. We get a different perspective too. When you're at the top of the mountain, it's kind of that pull back and seeing what's all around,
Yeah.
instead of just seeing the details right in front of you. So that perspective has guided us a lot in our parenting and coping with some big changes in our lives, pulling back and seeing the big picture.
That's right. That's a big part of who we are and what we want to be doing in our conversations with you. And maybe it'd be good for Claire. I know Claire has some questions for us that will help people get to know us maybe a little bit
and
better.
Claire did not share this list of questions with us ahead of time. So we're going to be on the spot in real time,
And you know
answering
how that
questions
goes with
about,
me being,
yeah, it's dangerous. So we're a little nervous, but we're going to let her have give us some structure, ask us some questions, and we'll see where that goes.
All right, we'll start out easy. We'll go easy on you. Okay, so first, I'm sure your listeners would want to know, how did you guys meet?
Well, we have two different views of that.
Oh, let's hear it.
I mean,
Yeah, it's always interesting to hear your
I'll go
story.
first and then you can correct it, which I think will probably be the pattern of our podcast.
We agree on where we met.
Yeah, we met at O'Hare Airport. So we were both traveling. It was between our sophomore and junior year summer. And we
college.
were in college, and we were going overseas, and we flew. We both met at O'Hare Airport, meeting a group of people, and Tara totally hit on me. So we were there, and she.
What do you think,
Not
Claire? Does that
likely.
sound right?
Hey, wait a sec. No, you know how she hit on me? She goes, hey, don't you go to Wheaton College? And I was like, oh, she's in love with me, because not a lot of people would talk to me at the airport.
Were you in the same group?
We were both going with the same organization. So we all had to come together for orientation before we were going to different places for the summer. I was going to Japan. He was going to the Middle East.
Yeah, to the United Arab Emirates.
And so we had a week of orientation. So I recognized, we were all standing in this group of awkward people at baggage claim.
Wearing
the
kind
same
of
t-shirt. We were all told to wear the same
color.
Classic.
Well, it was the team organization.
shirt,
Yeah. So everybody was standing there looking for something to say, I suppose. And I
She
recognized
hit on me.
David's face. We happened to be in the same class at Wheaton College, but we hadn't met yet. But I recognized his face. So I did say, do you go to Wheaton College?
And, I was
And
like, oh, she's
that
in
was
love
the
with
beginning.
me. Now, unfortunately, I found out later she was dating somebody, and she's just a nice person, which I'm not used to.
Oh, how the mind plays tricks on you.
Yeah, so reading nonverbals, reading verbals are really important, and checking out. So but that's the
It
start
was the
of our
beginning of our
friendship.
relationship, because
Yeah.
we were then living in the same apartment complex that fall when we came back from our summer trip. And we're sharing we were both in developmental psychology. So
Oh, that's
we sort of
right.
became study buddies a little bit.
Yeah. I was very strategic in
Yeah,
picking my
I'm
study
sure.
buddy. And at that point, I really wasn't a good student. I didn't care about school. I was trying to figure things out, and I got really excited. So the irony is, my PhD is in child and family development. So where we met,
That
the
is
class that
funny.
we met in, that
I
ended
remember
up
when
being my career
I would
trajectory.
finish
wild.
an exam and get up and walk out of the room, and you would get up immediately after. I'd come out and I'd say, "Did you finish at the same time?" And you would say, "No, you didn't
Yeah.
even
No,
finish the
it was
exam."
close
You
enough, but I
just-
wanted to spend time with
just
you. So I was
followed
like,
me
yeah,
out.
it was close enough. I thought it was enough
that's-
to pass.
Real interest.
Yeah,
True
yeah.
love.
And
There'll be more stories on
My
that
persistence.
beginning. Yes,
My persistence
at
in
some point
pursuing.
in the podcast.
So there's a fine line. You have to know the difference between pursuing and stalking. And so, yeah. Anyway,
Here
we
we
can
are.
talk about
Here
it.
we
Here we are 30 years later
Yeah. Well, it worked out apparently.
so far.
All right. Let's see. What is an insult you received that you're proud of?
Ooh, individually.
Yeah, individually.
What's an insult that you're proud of? Ooh.
Yeah, no one ever insults me. I don't know. It's just all praise. I only get praise.
You just lost 5 listeners.
So mine probably would be that I like to agitate people. I'm an agitator, so I think the insult is you really push people's
Stir
buttons
things
and
up.
stir things up, and
Stir
it's
the pot.
usually
You are proud of that.
it's usually yeah,
It's
and
funny.
I say it's my spiritual gift.
You
My
do.
spiritual gift is
It's-
agitation. And
yeah.
the Bible and theology friends that I have say that's not a thing. I'm like, talk to people in my life. That's a thing. And they're like, no, we know that you're a pain in the butt. That's not a spiritual gift. But I
Clarification.
so I think people mean it as an insult, but I mean, that's why this is hard to answer, because I think the things that people mean as insults, I take with pride. That I'm willing to push and willing to agitate you for your growth, whether you like it or not. And so that I'm gifted at always, even when we're in just social settings, actually asking the question. That's probably the owie area. I just naturally do that, even without thinking. And then you're like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, that's a long list. But I don't think
I
that's...
never say that, just for the record.
No, she
I've
already
never
knows.
said
she
that.
already knows what's wrong with me. So what's
I'm trying to think. I don't feel like I've had insults hurled at me much, but I do remember hating being called shy. I was always, when I was younger, like, why are you so quiet? Why are you you're soft spoken? And somebody else framed it as I'm listening. And so I think that is, I like to listen before I speak. So
And I like
when
to
you-
speak before I listen.
right. So it works out
It's
well.
a good pairing. But I think it's also a thing that's frustrating. I don't know about an insult that you take pride in, but it's that, like, I can say really, what would be the word? Offensive things or really direct things, and people kind of just laugh or really take.
Right. You get
are
away
thoughtful.
with things.
Yeah, like
You can say offensive things and people think it's hilarious, but if I tried half of that,
They usually
would-
call her a name,
yeah.
and not a nice name.
Yeah.
So
well-
I mean, that's something in our relationship that, like, I can say things and you're like, that's horrible. Why? But people take
find
it
it funny.
in and listen or find it funny, and then Tara says something and then they're really offended.
It's because they know I choose my words carefully. So
It hits different.
it does. It does. Yeah.
Ah. All right, interesting. Okay, next question. What does your morning routine look like?
That's a good question because I'm still amazed that David has no routines. So that's
My routine
still,
is uniqueness.
I am a routine person. I do have routines. David, after 30 years of marriage, still surprises me. Still, if we're out to dinner and somebody says, how does David take his coffee? I'm like, you go ahead and ask him because I think I know, and then he'll do something completely different. So I find that funny. Sometimes he can't
He's
remember.
proud of that. Look at that
Yes.
face.
So what,
He is
there's a
like,
bit
see, he's
of-
proud of these things about himself. So I, for instance, in the morning, I eat the same thing for breakfast every day. I have my coffee the same way. I do things in the same order. I never know how that's going to go for David.
And for me, it just is kind of in the moment of like, oh, yeah, no, I think I'll try that. Or even in terms of dressing, of like wearing clothes. I think that's my ritual. I come down wearing some clothes, and you're like, are
And
you
I
going
say,
to wear
oh,
that?
yeah, you're going to wear that to school
And I'm like, and I
today."
usually go, nope, I just don't want my clothes to feel jealous. I'm walking it around the house, and then I'll go put on something else. That's a ritual. That's kind of a morning ritual.
No, that's not every day.
Takes his clothes for a
Yes,
walk.
but yeah, that's kind of that's the answer to that question. Is that for David? I don't think there is a typical routine for you really in the morning, and your schedule has always lent to that. It's not always the same.
Yeah.
In academics, you have a different schedule every day, and just when I get used to when that is, it changes again.
Yeah.
Class or schedule. So
Ah,
yeah, he does things by on the fly.
It's kind of like
complimentary.
it's kind of like my socks. If you notice, they're not the same. Oh, they are today. But usually, I dress by thickness rather than kind of whether they look alike or not. It's like, oh, it's the same thickness. I'll wear those two socks,
Interesting. Not the level of cold or hotness.
or that they match.
Okay,
Doesn't
yeah.
necessarily matter. It's just they have to have the same thickness.
All right. Good to know. But your socks do match today.
They
Just
do.
like to
They do.
confirm.
And guess what? They're the same thickness. It just happens that they're the same socks.
Okay. Let's see. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I am an introvert.
Right. I think our previous answers have made the answer to this question pretty clear. Who's the extrovert in this?
I like to have my alone time
Right,
and quiet time.
right.
So
That's
that means
funny.
I'm an introvert, right?
Right. Clearly, David gets his energy from being with people. we are balanced in this way of I am a classic introvert. Although I'd say I'm a social introvert. I like people, but I need to recharge when I've been with people.
Yeah.
Whereas you know, we're recently coming off sort of COVID restriction time at this point, and that was very hard for David. The lack of being able to be with people every day is what was the hardest thing. The lack of being able to hug people.
Yeah. I
So,
am a hugger. And
David
so
is a hugger and an extrovert,
poor
and I'm
Tara.
an introvert. That's
as we were stuck in the house of running around going, hey, you want to do something? Hey, what are you
and
doing?
all our kids were
Hey.
stuck with that too. Our kids were living here at times when they would have been in college or things. So that was made very clear who needed people and who enjoyed the downtime.
So if you're a social introvert, what kind of extrovert would I be? An extra extrovert?
I like that.
I think it's an extra extrovert.
Yes. You put the extra
well,
in
even-
extrovert.
even
That's good.
even at school, like most of the faculty have their offices closed, and so I'll have to actually knock on their doors to see if they want to play. And they're like, shouldn't you be reading or kind of writing? And I'm like, yeah, but let's have a conversation. So I think the social side of it, extra extrovert, social introvert,
That's
that's
fair.
us. Yep.
Okay. What's your favorite podcast? If you have one.
I'm a birth nerd, so mine usually I can't play out loud
No, there's
because
usually
David,
streaming
no,
and-
there's no, it's not live, but
No, but-
I listen to birth stories. It helps inform my thoughts about, birth. It's interesting to me. I can think and talk endlessly about birth. So most of the podcasts I listen to are birth related. I listen to the Birth Hour and Birthful and
Anything that has birth in the name.
yeah.
Placenta O'Plenty. Wasn't that one of them?
Is that really?
No.
That would be a great podcast.
We
though.
listen to podcasts sometimes when we're on a road trip. So we listen to the Radio Lab together. David loves Conan O'Brien.
Needs a friend.
Yeah.
And I could that's my...
David Van Dyke needs a friend.
No, I have enough friends.
We've been introduced to a few by our children, Zach in
Dark web.
particular. The Dark Web Diaries.
Yeah.
Very interesting about people.
Social engineering, kind of also tech, like stealing your identity and all those fun things.
Yeah, what happens behind the scenes with people who understand technology.
Yeah. I think those are those are the podcasts that I'm more eclectic, and Tara is right down the birth canal. Good thing this is a podcast and not a
Right.
video.
Not visual.
Yeah, no.
Do you have a favorite ritual for your family that
Oh.
you've done with your kids?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We do have.
I can think of a couple.
Yeah. I mean, particularly when they were young, we did, even though we've established that David is not a routine person, we found routines to be really helpful in raising our kids. So he was on board with that for when our children were young. We had 4 kids, all 2 years apart. So it was, there was some chaos that needed to be
when
corralled.
You had a 6, 4, 2, and newborn.
Yes,
That's
and
fun.
one thing we will say is that kids do thrive on some sort of predictability and routine.
Yeah, bedtime
And
ritual.
so
were
bedtime
really important.
rituals were a huge part of what kept us I don't know, sane. Yeah, I guess.
But it was consistent for the kids that then they knew what was going to happen, and we would have those rituals even when we would travel.
Right. So that helped them to transition well to other places because that stayed the same. So our ritual for bedtime looked like, we would have dinner early because usually you'd be coming off the train at a certain time. It was predictable. We'd have dinner. We insisted on sitting around the table at dinner. There were even routines around dinner time.
Yeah, the talk box.
We had conversation questions
talk
at the
box?
table. Yeah, we wrote down questions, and the kids could add their own questions to the box. They
I
could
love
write
that.
questions
My
down.
favorite. Can I say what my favorite one was?
Oh no, I don't remember what that was.
Why are underpants necessary?
Yeah, you love that question.
We had a whole
Wow.
dinner conversation of why underpants.
There was
were
nothing off
necessary.
limits at our dinner table. So when people join us for dinner, they're often surprised that there's no.
You would do it with guests.
Oh,
too?
even
no,
yes,
yeah.
even
I
with
love
guests.
that.
So we did sit around. Even when the children were little, we sat around the table for dinner, and they couldn't get down and run around. They had to ask. They had to thank the person who cooked the meal before they could be excused, and then they could. When we were all done, they could be excused. So that was a ritual that started the evening, and then there would be bath time.
Yep.
And that was a special time for kind of winding. Water is a huge thing for a wind down time for kids. I know one parent that said their best parenting advice is just add water. Anytime your kids, so put them in the bath, take them outside, in the rain, whatever. So they would have bath time, and then we would read a story, and then we would tuck them, we'd pray with them while they were in bed, and they'd go to sleep.
And even when they were teenagers, the story time didn't happen, but the praying and kisses, there'd be physical affection.
We insisted on that even when they were
teenagers.
Yes.
Sure, they love that.
Well,
but
it
instead
can be
of
the easy way or the hard way.
Yeah, that's right.
I was thinking just add water for the teenagers too.
Yeah.
Scrub under the arms.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you have to know your child. So there are some kids that get energized by water too. It's not just a soothing thing. So then it's having a bath at a different time
So that was one of our daily rituals, but bigger picture rituals would be we took summer trips to see grandparents. So we loved road trips. I know some people dread taking road trips with their kids. We loved having them contained in one place. And our kids really looked forward to it too.
Yeah.
I would make them a bag full of new books and things to do in the car.
That's
and
fun.
we had certain places we always stopped on the way to Colorado. And
it involved water. We made sure
we
there was a pool.
always picked a hotel with a pool because if that would be our promise as we drove for 12 hours. There'll be a swim time at the end.
And now with adult children, one of the rituals we have is around birthdays. So we're not a big stuff family of getting things, but we do a birthday meal. And given that we had 4 kids, it would be a special time that child would just have with both of us. And until they started to have really nice taste in restaurants and then we had to put some limits. Before that, it was like, yeah, wherever you want to go. And it's like, no, we're not going to the Michelin star.
Restaurant.
Yeah, they all like good food too.
It's unfortunate.
So those are fun. We
No,
could
it's good.
continue.
We like
Yeah,
we like that.
Yeah. We could go
It's a
on and on
win-win.
about rituals because I think rituals are
Yeah,
important.
it's really one of
thing.
our keystones. So we probably will talk a lot more about this in future podcasts too,
Yeah.
because it's one of the things we believe in for creating unity in any group, but really like belonging in a family.
Mm.
And
Good
marking,
memories.
and marking traditions, marking births and
Mhm.
important
Milestones.
in life.
Mm.
I always threatened a puberty party for each of the kids. That was a ritual.
Yeah, that'll be a whole separate
Yeah,
discussion.
We'll
That'll
talk-
be
so
its own podcast.
Put that down. We have to talk about
Wait for a puberty party.
puberty party.
Ooh.
What kind of cake?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, Claire, move us along.
Well, I was gonna be a little scandalous here and ask on the topic of children, which one is your favorite? But maybe we'll skip that.
Well, so I
depends
heard
on
this.
the day.
Yeah, that's what David says. I heard this from another mother that your goal as a mother is that each child believes they're your favorite. If they each secretly think they're your favorite, you've done a good job.
Ah, I like that.
And I just say it depends on the day. I have a favorite, but it's just it rotates around.
Again,
I
you guys
think,
compliment each other.
The challenge is the ones that are most like us. I think that for me, there's a couple that are like me, and you see the negative sides of yourself in your kids, and you're like, I couldn't change it for me, so I want to change it for my child, and leads
Can
to
rub
more,
each other the wrong way
more
more.
reactivity as a parent.
But also you have a different level of understanding.
Oh yeah.
So
I get
yeah,
'em.
they're each different, and
And that was frustrating too in terms of parenting, because you figure it out with the first one, and you're like, oh, we got this, and then the second one comes, and
completely different.
Yeah, it doesn't work. You have to kind of be creative and find the good fit with your child.
Yeah, but I think with 4 kids, naturally, there's some days where it's easier with one or two than it is with the others, and that changes over time. But we love them all.
Yeah,
we love
and-
you all, kids.
And each stage of finding the fun, finding the funny,
Yeah.
finding the flourishing in that stage. There's a lot of stuff that you don't like about each stage, but there's a lot to like about each stage.
Which you'll hear more about.
Yes,
future.
yes, we will. We definitely will tell a lot more stories.
Okay. Did you always want to be in your line of work?
No,
What would you do if
I
you
would
weren't
be-
a therapist?
I would now be a retired baseball player at the age that I am. I would have, my heart's desire would have been to play baseball for a living, or be in some kind of professional role in baseball.
We had a moment when he was in his master's program. We were living in California, and you were halfway through your master's degree,
Mhm.
and there was a baseball strike
1994.
where they were hiring
Whoa.
scab players, and there was a tryout for
Toronto Blue Jays.
near us. And David came home and told me this after I'd been at work, and he'd been in classes, and said, wouldn't that just be amazing? Can you believe that there'd be an opportunity that I could try baseball again? And I said, do it. And he just, his face was, I've never seen him more shocked. He's like, well, I'm in the middle of my master's program. I'm like, do it. If you want to do this, you have an opportunity, go try it. Obviously his face lights up every time he talks about baseball. And I think that was, you missed it by
I
a
missed
day.
the tryout by a day.
But we're all about chasing
No.
dreams. And honestly, I don't think you thought you'd really change directions at that point.
No,
But
because the scab players.
I calling
were
your
all
bluff, or
fired.
were you serious?
You were. Well, I was serious in my own little.
But I was
fantasy of
serious
a
about
world.
encouraging you too.
Yeah,
Like, go for it.
and it was a meaningful moment for our relationship to have your dreams supported, even though it was a ridiculous kind of idea. So, given that I'm not a professional athlete, then yes, I am right where I need to be, and I can't believe I get to do what I get to do for a living. I get to teach and work with families and couples and train the next generation to do that. It's so fun. The chaos, the suffering, and that's
Suffering.
and that's just for the students.
See?
I guess on that note, and I want to hear from you too, Tara, but what's a common myth about your profession?
A common myth is that we have answers for everybody's problems. So,
Mm.
and then the second myth is people know what's wrong. So the first myth is you go to therapy and they're going to solve all your problems. That's not the case. Most therapists are experts in process of how to lean into the pain, how to navigate the problems in life, and sometimes that goes away, but not all the time. And then the second one is a lot of times families come in and say this is the problem. If that was the problem, they would have fixed it. They're 100% wrong. That's the problem, and so that's
They are wrong.
yeah. All people are
The
wrong.
problem
Of, like,
is
the
you don't know
problem.
what the problem
Yeah,
is.
the problem
Yeah.
is this is not the symptom. It's what's going on to maintain the symptom that is bothering you.
Mm.
So anyway, let's get back to Tara
Yeah.
and her career path, because
Yeah,
it's a
so
little bit
what-
more windy.
What would you do if you weren't a birth doula, or what have you done?
Well, I
And then-
started out in something completely different. I was a communications major trying I thought about journalism at one point, but my first job was for a not-for-profit in Chicago, doing their fundraising and public relations.
Mm.
So I did writing and I ran events. And while we were raising our kids and putting David through graduate school, I did copy editing for publishing houses, and did a lot of editing that I could do from home because it worked for me.
I love the editing, the Journal of Applied Poultry Science
Yeah.
that you worked for.
What?
Yes. So when we lived in Georgia, when he was at the University of Georgia,
Go
I was working for a company that edited all sorts of publications, and one of their jobs was for there was agriculture and
Yeah,
sorts of things at University of Georgia,
it's
and
Purdue
the
chicken
Journal
down
of
there.
Applied Poultry Science. Those I
That's
still remember.
wild.
The learning
I-
about the evisceration.
Yes,
room.
learning about the process of plucking chickens and shelf life of I think I was reading one of those articles when I was newly pregnant,
You were pregnant
and it
with
made
Zachary.
me
Oh.
so nauseous. I had
Yeah.
to stop the job.
She's like, "Do you know that there's a half-life for chicken?" And I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah. So
let's not talk about
no. So that that was what I did while we were raising the kids, and this new work as a doula came after I had had all four of my kids, and I was thinking about what I was passionate about. My copy editing work was not bringing me joy. It was just something I could do to make a little bit of money, but usually I was working late into the night after we put the kids down, and I'm finding mistakes in people's work. It wasn't bringing me a lot of joy. But as often happens, the births of my own kids transformed the way I thought about birth and the way I wanted to help other families have a better experience for this big life transformation. So I got trained I still had never heard of a doula. I didn't know what that was. So I started out getting trained to be a childbirth educator. But teaching wasn't my strong suit at that time either, because it was having a bunch of people in a classroom, teaching them information that they might or might not remember in the heat of the moment. But I found out what a doula was, and that changed everything for me, because it's being in real time with people while they're experiencing. It's kind of like joining David in being with people in suffering, really.
Yeah.
And helping it be a better experience, and helping people learn more about themselves and how to move forward from those things and
Strengthen their relationship in the birth
so it
process.
was very much a second career, and started in my 40s.
Yeah, so we're just hitting our stride. So
Yeah.
we feel like young professionals.
We feel like we're late bloomers. We really we really came to the jobs that we love after we turned 40.
Yeah, and our friends are all talking about retiring, and we're like, why would you want to retire?
We're just getting started.
Yeah, this is fun.
It's awesome to hear, you both finding that niche. I
Mhm.
don't know what the word is.
You say tomato.
Tomato.
I say it's wrong.
Well, that's awesome to hear. All right, we got one more question for you.
Oh, good.
Should be pretty easy. What book are you reading right now?
I'm
Or what's-
reading Candace Millard's book on James A. Garfield and his presidency. So It's great. I like historical nonfiction. So people that write about history using lots of footnotes, but write it in a narrative form, is really, really fun for me. So that I'm reading that, and then I'm reading Augustine.
Always reading a guy.
Always with the light reading.
The light
There's
reading,
always
yeah.
there's always a theological book that I'm reading, and so that's those are the two I'm reading right now, in addition to what my students are reading, because it's just fun to make sure that they are really reading. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm reading a biography of Andre Agassi, which is really, really a good read. It's called
well
Open.
written.
Yeah. I started reading it because I'm in a book club that read, what was the name of that? The Tender Bar.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I read that in a book club, and the author of that book was the ghostwriter for Andre Agassi's biography. And I loved his writing. So a friend of mine recommended that, and that's what I'm reading at night. And he's just a fantastic writer.
Yeah. We love
awesome.
to read, so that's
Readers are leaders.
A ritual that we have.
we do.
So when we go to bed at night, we always read before we go to sleep, and I'll say we generously because David lasts about 10 seconds before his head is in the book. He's asleep, and
I read through osmosis. It just soaks. The words kind of go off of
lay
the
it over
page.
your
when
face.
he's done,
into
he's done.
my
Yeah.
eye
So your
holes.
reading has to get done during the daylight hours.
Yeah.
At nighttime, it doesn't last long.
No.
But I like to read
Yeah,
a chapter or
that's the
two
one
before
now.
we go to sleep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, awesome.
Well, thanks for those questions. It's always nice to have someone prompt you, because it's hard to talk about ourselves.
I think we got some good info out of you.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
hopefully you all listening kind of get a little sense of who we are and what this might look like. And so we're looking forward to kind of the future. We're going to have kind of a pattern of our podcast.
Right. We love storytelling. So we'll tell some of our own, but then we'll invite other people in to tell their stories on a particular topic. And then we'll invite an expert to come give us a deeper.
We can ask them questions.
A lot of
Yes.
footnotes.
Yes.
A lot of footnotes.
Yeah.
We'd love for you to kind of contact us and let us know what you'd like us to address, in addition to kind of the different stages of parenting and singleness. Mainly, we're going to talk about relationships in all the various forms, because that's our sweet spot is relationships. So we'd love to hear from you. So please reach out. You'll see in the show notes our website and social media places to reach out to us. Please do that, and subscribe on wherever you get your favorite podcasts. I learned that from Conan's producer. Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, wherever fine podcasts are produced.
You're a true believer.
Yeah. So we're glad to get to talk to you today, and we can't wait to do this some more. Thanks,
Yeah.
Claire.
Thanks, Claire.
Yeah.
Keeping us
Shout
on
out to
track
Claire.
as
Till
always.
next
All right. Y'all have a good week.